Welcome back. It's Lisa Swain again, and now we're going to talk about high quality supportive environments, part 3. This is your third and final session for the supportive environment. So we looked at many ways in which the environment can be planned to promote social emotional development and prevent challenging behaviors. We've talked about physical design, environmental cues, schedules and routines, transitions, and promoting engagement. Now we focus on rules and expectations and positive descriptive feedback and attention. When children know expectations and are engaged, it can prevent challenging behaviors. The environment can be intentionally planned to support peer relationships, and this is really key. We're going to look at this in our Tier 2 more specifically, but for now, let's look at how culture impacts expectations.
I'm Paquita Jarman Smith. I started in early childhood education when my children were young as a home care provider. I then moved on as a teacher, administrator, and now I'm an early childhood consultant at the State Education Resource Center. Thinking and learning about cultures and the benefits of culturally responsive relationships is a critical component of the pyramid model. As we move through this tier, we should always keep in mind the impact that culture has on behavior and our understanding of the behavior and the messages that children are communicating. Culture shapes our values, assumptions, interpretations, conversations, and the actions that we take. It is a powerful lens through which we select and interpret what we observe. This is key to individuals who work with young children. We want to have a cultural lens which is not narrowly defined by our own cultural norms, but which is open to the many different family cultures. Culture impacts how children learn, how they cope, solve problems, and communicate. Think about and consider how some ethnic groups may see problem solving around behavioral challenges as something to be cautious about. They may have had a past experience that they felt was punitive. Consider that they might be the kind of family that solves problems by sharing solutions that will give children clear guidance and skills. For example, in my family, we have our kids practice how to respect elders, how to play together, and ask for a turn in appropriate ways. Some children might be reared to speak, talk, ask questions when they're learning, and then you might have other children who may have been reared to listen, wait, be quiet when they're learning. Think about the different ways that you learn and solve problems and how important it is to be open to diverse perspectives of our students. Those who practice cultural humility work to increase their self-awareness of their own biases and perceptions and engage in lifelong reflection process about how to put aside and learn from families and children. Humility in this sense is not being weak or submissive, but having a sense that one's own knowledge is limited as to what truly is another's culture. If we take this approach, it will help all children and create a positive learning environment. So instead of assuming that most or all of the children should know how to be friends and know how to share and take turns, how to control their anger, etc., let's assume most children don't. and we need to help them learn these skills. Let's always keep in mind that there may be differences in families' and teachers' expectations of children's behaviors. There's some things that you should keep in mind. Most children don't come to school knowing what teachers expect them to do. They need to be taught. Let's also keep in mind that teachers might be unaware of the cultural expectations of the child at home, and that there may be differences in the family and the teacher's expectations of children's behavior. And finally, this could be the child's very first experience outside of the home and family, and they have a lot to learn with you. The final area teachers need to consider is related to behavior and learning expectation. Behavior and learning expectations illustrate how children should act. Notice the 3 expectations at the top of the slide. They have colorful pictures and words in Spanish and English. They apply to all children and adults across all settings. For instance, your classrooms, the bathroom, and outdoors. The key is that children need to be taught the behavior and learning expectations of the classroom. Teachers need to think about what expectations they have for children and then consider how they will go about teaching them. When children know what's expected of them, they will engage in positive behaviors. So, what might these expectations mean to preschoolers? Will they be able to understand them? How might cultural differences impact children's understanding, and how would you handle that? Now let's look at the 8 examples of expectations at the lower part of the slide. You'll see respectful, safe, team player, peaceful, polite, responsible, honest, and friendly. They need to be narrowed down to 3, which are developmentally appropriate and relevant. Program-wide expectations are helpful so that all adults and children know what's expected. Ways that you can get started is by polling your staff and families and the children to decide on the top 3 favorites. Then you can go about making your posters for the hallways, outside, in your centers, etc. You can also ask teachers to share what their program or classroom has chosen for expectations in the past, or what they would love to see in the future. Make sure that you're including home languages as much as possible, and preparing lessons, scripted stories, and other props and games to teach these expectations.
So you've heard about expectations. Now let's talk about classroom rules. Rules help to clarify the expectations for specific settings. They may just apply to a certain setting, such as a playground. So in the slide you just saw, we had an example of 3 expectations: be safe, be kind, be responsible. And if those were your program-wide expectations, your rules in your classroom might be keep your hands safe, use your walking feet, and use your listening ears. But you wouldn't have the same rules for a playground. Perhaps you wouldn't have use your walking feet if there was an area that children could run outside. So when defining your expectations with rules, it's important to remember who, what, and how. Teachers need to use the child's name when speaking to them, be specific about what they want the child to do, and let the child know the appropriate steps that they should be following. And on the next video, you're going to see an example of this in practice.
For children to feel safe and supported in an early childhood setting, they need to know both what to expect and what is expected of them. But how do you decide on the rules? And how do you clearly communicate your expectations to young children?
Our voices are quiet. Good job. We sit crisscross applesauce.
Adults have to make sure they're letting kids know what they expect them to do and how they expect them to act. And if we're so ready to babble at kids to get them to learn to talk and clap and cheer when a baby's trying to take steps, you would be that invested in getting across to kids what they need to know in order to behave in the way we want them to and expect them to.
Okay, then where do the blocks go? Where do we pile them up? Let's go put them away.
Well, I think it starts early where I will say, okay, I'm going to pick up this, and then when this is put away, we can take out that. If we do this now, then we'll be able to do that later. And so they've seen me do it, and then as they become more capable of doing that, they want to help.
Avery has cracker sticks. She brought them from home.
Some of the ways of letting them know what I expect is through positive reinforcement.
That was nice of you to ask her, though.
I love the way you're doing this. You're such a great helper. Gee, you're so thoughtful. Then they know, oh, I like that. And children want to please. They really do. When you respond to them in that way, you're setting the criteria for them to know that this is what we do.
Put your juice on the table and you can come back over here. How's that? Thank you, Claire.
Once they realize that this isn't something I should be doing right now, they'll just look at me and they'll wait almost for me to say, should you be doing that? And they know, and they stop and they stop doing it. So they're really self-regulating by looking at me. Wait, because they know they're going to get a response. The older they get, the more structure I see they like and they need, because that's how they make sense of the world, really, and their environment.
Identify really what are your expectations, and then just to ask yourself why. Why is that the expectation? Is it age appropriate? Is it appropriate to what you know that kid's able to do? And then once you've thought of that, are those expectations realistic for the setting you're asking for them in?
In the infant toddler classroom, our behavioral expectations are really based around safety. Infants and toddlers climb. That's what they do at this age. So we're teaching them, our table's not for climbing on, and kind of redirecting them. If they're throwing a block, making sure we're providing materials in the classroom where they can throw something. So, blocks are for building, stacking, showing them, let's go use a ball if you want to throw.
The classroom environment is set up in a very purposeful, intentional way to foster as much independence as possible in my classroom. All of the materials that they need for mealtimes are in a special little shelf that's child height so that the children can set the tables. If they drop their cup, they know where to get another one. They don't need teacher support. They can do it on their own. We have a menu available so they know how many they can take, and they help each other with that for the younger children.
We post up a classroom expectations chart that we have in our block area, and every week we try to cover some of the different aspects of the classroom expectations. We also do a buddy system, so one child supports the next child to make good decisions.
So that's a great idea. So keep our legs inside.
We noticed that some of the children hadn't been experienced with the slide. There were some accidents going on outside, so we We talked about different rules for each area of the playground.
Yes, Max.
First, we get up the stairs and we slide down to the slide.
Yeah, so walk up the stairs.
And slide down to the slide.
Okay, walk up the stairs. Do our rules. And slide down.
When children help to come up with the rules, they definitely own it a lot more. It's in child-appropriate language instead of, the teacher telling you, this is how you're going to do it. They need to understand how to keep themselves and each other safe in the classroom and how to have the best experience there.
They need to be taught because that's how they learn to regulate themselves.
Kids really do flourish when they know what to expect. So it really is a component of social emotional wellness. It's a way that children can feel at rest in order to devote energy to other things like learning and playing and getting to know another kid.
Here is an example of circle time rules. So this would be specific to a certain time of the day and what rules the children need to know at circle time. You would want to use visuals and teach one at a time, especially at the beginning of the year. You're going to teach one at a time and have the children practice. Photographs of the children demonstrating the rules is very helpful. Children love to see their own photo and those of their classmates in your visuals. So there are lots of ways to be creative, and this just shows you a few examples.
Developing classroom rules has been, extremely important to me, to incorporate the children to own the classroom and own, their environment. I think they need to understand how to keep themselves and each other safe. We also do classroom rules for outside.
So we're going to be practicing going on the slide. What are some, raise a quiet hand if you know some important things about going on the slide.
We talked about different rules for each area of the playground.
Ella, what's another rule?
One person can go at a time.
Great.
The kids came up with the fact of only one child can go down the slide at a time. So we all lined up by the slide and then we practiced that.
Good job.
When children do come up with the rules or help to come up with the rules, they definitely own it a lot more.
High five for being safe. High five for being safe, Zach.
Well, those rules don't just stay in the classroom. They understand that there are ways that they need to keep themselves safe and keep one another safe. And it contributes to their caring for one another.
Dominic and Ella may go.
So, as has been mentioned before, using actual photos of the children in your classroom can be very helpful for them. And you can see that in these visuals. The rules should be posted at children's eye level and positively stated. So in this case, you see in the Library Center, we turn the pages gently. We read books with our eyes, and we share books with our friends. So the teacher should use multiple strategies to ensure each child understands both the individual and classroom behavioral and learning expectations. When you have issues in a center, such as a library, that's when you would consider developing rules for that center with the children. So you can see lots of different children were photographed in the Library Center demonstrating the rules. What are some other areas that you think it might be beneficial to have some specific rules that children help develop?
Children's fascination with rules means that they can and should be involved in creating them.
Thinking and talking about rules helps children think about why rules are necessary and what would be good rules for all. It helps them to think about regulating their own behavior in relationship to the behavior of other children, or what others call self-regulation. When children are engaged in thinking and talking about rules, they're actively involved in the democratic process. The emphasis is not on blind obedience, but on understanding why rules are important for all concerned. Children are more likely to understand the value of rules if they are involved in creating them. They're more likely to follow rules they've had a part in creating because they understand their importance. They're even more likely to remind other children of the rules and to help enforce the rules. For the beginning of the program or year, teachers can conduct group discussions of why rules are important and brainstorm with children what would be good classroom rules. Teachers can use good children's literature, puppets, and other props to read and dramatize helpful and hurtful behaviors. Teachers can then focus on helpful and hurtful behaviors, how they make you feel, and what you should do when they happen. It's important to write children's ideas for rules as they state them, and then review the list with the group. Discuss each rule and why each might be important. Now, once some classroom rules have been established and are written down and posted, then the rules can be referred to when problems occur. When rules get broken, teachers can ask the child who has broken a rule to think about what they have done and what rule they have broken. Teachers can take the child by the hand to the posted rules and help the child find the rule in question and then review why that rule is important. Teachers can ask the child about what they might do next time. It's a long-term process that can't be accomplished in just one group meeting. Rule discussions are ongoing throughout the duration of the early childhood program. But in the long term, children who are engaged in such discussions will advance in their thinking about what it means to be a good citizen and what it means to be respectful toward others.
We visited a classroom to see how one teacher creates rules with her preschool children. The teacher had recently brought a dollhouse to school, and she wanted to engage the children in creating rules for using it.
But I thought we need to decide some rules on how to play with the dollhouse so we respect the dollhouse.
Martin was playing wrongly with it.
How was he playing wrongly with it?
He was banging the paper up and down.
He was banging on it. I heard some of the problems we had where people were banging on it. I heard that people were pushing around it. Is that a safe way to play and respect the dollhouse?
I didn't do all that.
Well, it doesn't matter who did it. It doesn't matter who did it, but if we have some rules, we'll know how to play over there, won't we? We really work a lot in our classroom on respecting materials. They're not my materials by any means, even though I'm the teacher. They're our materials. It's our classroom. We talk about that a lot. My friend Grace said she thinks a good idea would to say only 2 friends at a time can play in the dollhouse.
Don't understand.
Some friends are learning. You're right. Some friends are learning how many 2 people are.
Alex is.
Yeah, he's learning how many 2 friends.
And I'm learning. I'm learning how to back stuff, but sometimes I
You're learning how to respect things. You're right. And that's what preschool's for. So Grace said a great idea for one of our rules would be to have 2 friends. And why do you think that's a good idea, Grace?
Good.
How come? Does anyone else have an idea? Why is it a good idea to have only 2 friends play with the dollhouse at a time?
There'll be 2.
Cole?
So you won't bang on it and fight over it.
So people won't fight. Did you feel like when there were too many friends over there, people were fighting around the dollhouse?
And I couldn't hear Grace.
Oh, and when everyone was there, you couldn't hear each other?
No. I was trying to talk to Alyssa, but everybody was too loud.
And it was too loud.
And we have to let somebody talk two friends talk and then we can hear each other.
I think that is a great reason to say there are two friends playing by the dollhouse. So we'll say two. What does that start with? F. Good job. Two friends.
That's 12.
Oh, you know, I'll put this dot here so we know it's rule number 1. That was good looking though, Langston. Two friends. Does anyone else have any ideas what kind of rules we should have? Kirsten?
Well, it can be no jumping on the, don't make Tiger. No. Don't make. Hey,
I can't hear Kirsten.
Well, we can make the rule. No, bouncing the toys on the dollhouse.
Okay, no bouncing the toys on the dollhouse. Does anyone have another idea? I think making their own rules is so huge because it gives them so much ownership. Just like I said, I emphasize this is our classroom. Having ownership of the classroom as well as part of that is having ownership of the rules in our classroom and how we treat and respect materials. What kind of hand should we use with the dollhouse?
I'll show you how something like 2 days. I'll show you how easy.
Why do you think we should close it?
Because it's almost going to break.
You think it's almost going to break? Well, it's fine.
Miss Kate, look how easy.
Oh, Alyssa is showing us gentle hands.
I can do it too.
They right away, even someone used the terminology, this is fragile, and they understood they need to be careful with it. It was delicate, so they understood the gentle part. Those sound like some really good rules for our dollhouse, I think.
There are several steps to creating classroom rules. We are going to take a look at all of them, and then we will go over them one by one. The first step is to ask the children to think of rules. Next, you combine and edit the rules with the children's input. As children suggest rules, you ask them to tell you why a rule is important and to give an example. If inappropriate rules are suggested, you should explain why they should not be added. You should also suggest adding important rules that children don't mention. Then, after the class meeting, you can rewrite the rules and discuss them with children at the next class meeting. Finally, you should review the rules on the chart throughout the year. When creating class rules, you first ask children for their ideas for rules. Then you write down the children's rules, restating them in a clear way. The rules work best when they cover things that really matter. Too many rules, or rules that don't matter too much, can be overwhelming. So in step 2, you can help children stick to a few really important rules by combining and editing with the children's permission. Let's think about what this might look like. One child might say, "Don't tear up the books." Another child might say, "Don't throw the blocks." And another child might say, "Put the caps on the markers." After writing those rules down, you might say, "It sounds like what you are saying is we need to take good care of our classroom materials." Now, why would you write down rules for preschool children who can't read yet? Research suggests that children can make meaning from print, even in the early preschool years. Even though the children are not able to read the rules word for word, they will look at them for clues about what each rule says. This kind of early exposure to print is important for later reading and writing.
So you've seen lots of examples of involving the children in the rules and expectations. Here are a few guidelines to always keep in mind. Limit the number of rules to 3 to 5 and involve the children in developing the rules whenever possible. Post the rules visually at children's eye level. Teach the rules systematically. Every day throughout the year, children need to be reminded, and it needs to be stated positively. What do you want children to do? Clearly, concisely. Is it developmentally appropriate? Think about what we're asking them to do. Do children need to sit crisscross applesauce? That can be very uncomfortable for some children. What is our intention? We want them to be safe and not disrupt other children. So can we think of other ways for them to sit to achieve that? and make sure to use visuals as much as possible. And again, photographs of the children can be so helpful. And the last thing, you see the deposits. How do we provide that positive, descriptive feedback, making those deposits, catch them every time they're following the rules, and make a big deal about it, especially if they're new rules and they're learning them. So in the next video, you're going to see the children practicing rules and being very concrete in their practice. So what does it mean to have a quiet voice? What does gentle touching mean? If you're going to be teaching them, they'll need to practice and show you that they understand.
Okay, let's do our classroom rules. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I need some helpers. Let me see. Sean, what's our first classroom rule? We use walking feet. Show me walking feet. Show me running. Where can you run? Outside. Good job. Diana, what's another classroom rule?
Inside voices.
Inside voices. Say hello really, really loud. Where can you use that voice? Outside. Say hello using your inside voice. Say hello and don't make a sound. Deja, what's another classroom rule?
Gentle touches.
Gentle touches. What would be a gentle touch? A pat on the back. Very good. How about a shaking the hand? Say good morning. Good morning. Or a hug. That's right. Good job. Or hold hands. Okay, let me see. Thomas, what is another classroom rule? We take turns. Jacob, why do we take turns?
Because other people
Other people
want to share.
might want to share. Can everybody play in the library at the same time? They can't fit? Okay. Can everybody play on the computer at the same time? So we take turns so everybody has a chance to play and share.
Everybody can fit outside.
You're right, everybody can go outside, but can everybody slide at the same time?
No. That would be dangerous.
That would be dangerous.
But we can take turns.
We can take turns.
But we can't slide on the slide.
You're right.
Slide.
Okay.
I think I'm going to crawl up onto the slide and then jump off so onto the slide.
Is that safe?
No.
No, it's not. Colton, can you tell us our last classroom rule? We clean up. Where do we clean up? Everywhere. Why do we clean up?
Because we don't want to step on them.
We don't want to step on our toys. You might slip, okay? Where do we clean up and where do we put our toys? Where else?
In the closet.
In the closet. Very good.
In the food area.
The food and very good. Okay, let's say our rules together.
And we put the car
Kaylee?
back to the car.
Will you point? Okay, point to them as we say them, please. Okay, the very top. Let's say them together. We use walking feet. We have inside voices. We use gentle touches. We take turns. And we clean up. Very good thing.
Some teachers like to use stop and go behaviors, and there is a really nice new visual for doing this on the challengingbehavior.org website. and you're going to see a video of a teacher demonstrating stop and go behaviors.
I have a picture of a friend who's running in the classroom, using his feet for running. Guys, is that a stop or is that a go? It's a stop. Can you show me your red side? That's a stop. I see some reds. Very good. That's a stop. I have a friend, and you know what? They want to get through. So what he does is he kicks his friend's leg out of the way. Is kicking a go or is kicking a stop?
It's a stop.
Kicking is a stop. We use our feet for walking. What are go things and what are
Stop things.
what are stop things? Now, I have one other thing I want to do with you.
So as always, we want to assume positive intent. We know that educators are doing the very best they can, and we are so thankful for everyone who is sharing their videos of their teaching practices with us for the purposes of the module trainings. Let's really think about the practices you just saw. Were the rules stated positively, and were they developmentally appropriate? Did they meet the guidelines we've been discussing? What are the strengths of this group activity, and how might you adapt an activity like this for your particular needs? How does this activity actually help children learn the rules? What other materials might you use? How do you think you would modify this activity to support students with different abilities or dual language learners? Did you notice that some children turned the green toward the teacher when they said stop? Remember, children are egocentric. So if they want to say stop, they might be looking at the red and seeing the stop, but not realize that green is on the other side. I've done this similar activity with children and had red on both sides of one and green on both sides of another so that they didn't have that confusion. The other thing is that we want to have many, many more go behaviors than stop behaviors. Remember those deposits. We want to let kids know what they should be doing, not what they shouldn't be doing. So if you're doing the stop and go activity, which is a really nice activity for children, just make sure to have more goes and have the kids help make their own stop and go signs. They love doing that, and it gets them way more engaged in the activity. So let's think again about our essential positive messages. What are we trying to convey to children as it applies to expectations, rules, and positive descriptive feedback? If, for example, our expectation for all children and adults is that we want you to treat others with kindness and respect, what would be the concrete actions we would need to do to convey that message? So, for instance, we will treat you with kindness and respect. We will be warm and affectionate towards you. We will hold you, pat your back, and hug you. We will look you in the eye when we're talking to you, and we will speak to you at eye level. We will be gentle with you and remind you to do the same. We will be patient and remember that you are learning how to behave. We will acknowledge and praise your behavior when you are kind to others and tell you specifically what we see. We will make sure to always notice when you are doing wonderful things. We will show appreciation when you're kind to us. We will speak positively to you and tell you what to do instead of what not to do. How do we build that ultra important homeschool connection? It is so much better for the child to have consistency, including similar words used at school and at home. So encourage families to create household rules. Help them make the rules that teach their children what to do, and provide them strategies to use for teaching and reinforcing the rules. There are many resources on challenging behavior to help families do this. Remember, using the same words are so helpful so that all caregivers at school and at home are using similar words. If one teacher says gentle hands and another teacher says soft hands, and then the family member is saying gentle touch, it can get really confusing for children. So having that homeschool communication is so important, even getting down to specific vocabulary. Here are just two of the wonderful resources for families, and they are in several different languages. The Backpack series has so many different one-page resource on every topic that families might come across. Here you see how to give clear directions and help us have a good day, positive strategies for families. They all can be found on challengingbehavior.org, and they're all for free. So this brings us to the end of Module 1. We have talked in Part 1 about nurturing and responsive relationships, and now in the second part we have covered all the things that go into a high quality environment and the things that you're considering, the routines, the classroom design, the transition expectations, and the rules. All of these can be used to promote engagement and prevent challenging behavior. And we always go back to the base. And you'll see as we move along, we're going to keep going back to the base because this is what's going to support all children. So the early childhood classroom environment should be a nurturing and supportive space that encourages positive interactions between all children and all adults. It should provide an environment that promotes engagement of every child, including those children with challenging behavior. Before you go, there's actually some reflection that would be helpful. Here's a suggestion for you. There is a checklist, and this is really on the first module, and you're going to concentrate on the high quality supportive environments. And after you complete your checklist, reflect on 3 areas that you would like to focus on in your classroom. These can be so helpful, and having a teacher goal planning form too can really make sure that we do the things we're thinking about now, especially if you're not in your classroom while you're doing this training. So I highly recommend that you go through the checklist. These are all found on challengingbehavior.org, and I've included the links for you so you have them. Again, thank you so much for all that you do and taking part in this training. And I'll see you again in Module 2.